Good afternoon. Thank you, Mary, for that lovely introduction. I hope you're ready to start our final session of the day with a high as we talk about hemp. My Nuffield Scholarship journey started with a simple question. What is the potential of hemp for UK farmers? A question born out of my excitement about the potential I could see in the crop given its many uses. Hemp is cannabis with a low percentage of THC, the compound with psychedelic properties which can get you high. And there's lots of exciting opportunities in the pharmaceutical and recreational spaces, but for my study, I chose to focus on the industrial applications, which I could see as the most accessible diversification for arable farmers. All parts of the hemp plant can be used, but the two most important are the seed and the stem. Hemp seeds are highly nutritious, being full of omega-3 and healthy fats, and can be used for cooking oils, protein powders, as well as in paints, varnishes, and biofuels. The stem has a woody core or sheath surrounded by long bast fibers. Those fibers are strong and durable, making them ideal for textiles, like this suit, and rope. Historically, hemp was so important in the UK that in the Tudor period, it was actually required that for every 60 acres farmed, a quarter of an acre had to be grown as hemp. The sheath can be used in construction by mixing it with lime and then used as hempcrete. This can be either poured like concrete or made into blocks, and the resulting walls have fantastic insulation properties, are breathable, mold-resistant, and fire-resistant, making for a healthier home. On top of that, the fiber can be used in biocomposites for things like car body parts, and research is finding new opportunities all the time. As the pressure mounts to reduce our reliance on oil, a crop that can be used as an alternative in so many petrochemical-heavy industries sounds like an ideal solution. So why isn't everyone growing it? Particularly given the additional benefits it has for soil and carbon sequestration. The year I started my Nuffield Scholarship, we planted our first crop of hemp on the farm. This was a year later than I'd originally planned due to the difficulty we had securing a license from the Home Office, thanks to their requirement that it's got to be located out of sight of public rights of way, which in a busy county like Kent is not easy. We experienced the challenges that I've heard about from so many hemp farmers. The licensing restrictions, the lack of agronomic information. For example, some people will tell you it needs fertilizer, others will tell you none. The access to processing facilities and harvest equipment, specifically the fiber requires a process called decortication, and access to market. While there's lots of potentials, there aren't many buyers who will purchase unprocessed material. Despite the conflicting information I've found around agronomy, my early visits to UK growers such as Good Hemp, Margent Farm, and Yorkshire Hemp, who were growing successfully, convinced me that this wasn't the main barrier to adoption. However, access to one of the UK's few processing facilities, usually their own, had been core to their success. It became clear to me that processing was the bottleneck. And so, when I set off on my international travels, I focused on processing and added value. I looked at all sorts of models, from cooperatives like Le Chanvrier or our own British Wool, through to small farmer-owned models, all the way through to facilities costing tens of millions of dollars, like I&D Hemp in Montana. I pondered the best way to maximize return for the grower. Go big, like the farmers in Alberta, where local government is supporting investment in processing facilities so that the province can move away from being just a commodity producer, or go after a very specific luxury niche, like Padenga Crocodile Farm in Zimbabwe. But something kept bothering me. As I traveled across the USA and Canada, both world leaders in hemp production, I kept on hearing tales of disappointment from farmers, often with barns filled with unsold hemp bales. This was because of processing facilities not getting built, or failing, or fluctuation in market demand, meaning that the price had crashed. In Colorado, the epicenter of the first hemp boom, the situation was so widespread that even on a cattle farm that I visited after a chance meeting in a diner, the rancher told me that he had kit he'd bought from a hemp farmer who'd gone bust. On the other side of the equation, processors complained to me that they struggled to get farmers to grow for them, particularly with the extreme price inflation we saw as a result of the war in Ukraine. Farmers wanted to focus on crops with a stable, known margin, like maize or soya. Time and time again, I would discuss the chicken and egg problem. Which comes first, the supply or the demand? To develop the hemp sector, should we focus on increasing hectares of cultivation, building the processing infrastructure, or generating demand from the end user? For hemp cultivation to make sense, the numbers have to stack up. And looking at this gross margin from a selection of growing scenarios, you can see that it is possible to make money from hemp, particularly when you're growing the seed. But that's tricky in a use case scenario because hemp seed isn't ready to harvest until late September, when the weather is catchy at best. And that's why my focus has been on the fiber, where you can still make good money as long as the yield and price is right. Hemp flax was a business I was really excited to visit. They're a Dutch vertically integrated business who grow hemp and flax and process it into insulation. Their recent expansion into Romania suggested to me that surely they'd cracked it. But when I spoke to Bart on their farm in Romania, he described the same challenges. They were only able to make a profit in Romania when processing as a dual-use crop. And in the Netherlands, they were losing farmers to other crops which offered better payments from subsidy programs. Finally, I had a light bulb moment. I'd been approaching the question all wrong. The price was too low for farmers to justify growing because of the risks and variability. Margins couldn't easily be improved by reducing costs because the inputs required were low. So the price had to be higher. Common sense tells us that if you want to increase the price of a product, increasing the supply isn't the answer. You need to be increasing the demand. It's not about the chicken or the egg. It's about who's buying them at the supermarket. With that in mind, here are the steps I recommend for developing the UK hemp industry. Step 1, work with researchers to develop high-value opportunities. While it's exciting to decarbonize major emission industries like fashion or construction, they're fundamentally low margin. So you've got two barriers to address: the unwillingness to pay for more expensive materials unless forced by policy, and the need for volume, which keeps hemp as a low-price commodity crop. When I visited Cecilia Serghei, a textiles researcher at the University of Arad, Romania, she passionately told me about the unique mechanical properties of hemp as she delved into bags and boxes, showing me samples of fabrics she'd developed but had never seen the light of day due to a lack of engagement from industry. For example, a silver-infused ulcer dressing, which uses the moisture absorption properties of hemp to dry out the wound. Starting a hemp business today, rather than begin with processing, I'd look to innovations people like Cecilia are developing and how to bring them to market. Step 2, Now that there is money coming in from this small-scale cultivation, that can be channeled into further research and knowledge exchange to improve production efficiency. For example, genetic improvement to seed varieties to allow for an earlier harvest. Third, develop the scale. As cost of production comes down, yields increase, and knowledge of growing best practice improves, the risks for farmers are reduced, with the prospect of more consistent margins. This means that we are ready to expand into higher volume markets. On a trial site in Canada, we discussed what could be the next Cinderella crop, like oilseed rape. Until the 1970s, rapeseed was rarely grown due to its bitter taste and volatile compounds. Then, the Canadian government invested in plant breeding to develop varieties with a mild taste. The resulting crop, canola, rapidly took off. And this is a perfect example of the path that hemp could take. Looking at this picture of some rather flea beetle bitten rape on our own farm, it can't come soon enough. So where does that leave me with my original question? I mentioned that when I started this journey in 2021, we were growing our first crop of hemp. In 3 seasons of trials and experiments, this is the first year where we haven't grown any hemp. While we've learned a huge amount, the biggest takeaway for me has been that while the potential is huge for hemp, those opportunities aren't yet readily available to tap into as a farmer. So I wouldn't advise diving in just yet unless you're happy to have a lot of work and you're very comfortable with risk. What is needed is a strong coordinating industry body to join the dots between research, industry, and growers. The European Industrial Hemp Alliance conference in Prague was a perfect example of what can be achieved with such a body. And the building blocks are coming together. In the last year, we have had updates to licensing policy, a major DEFRA-funded research project, and a £3 million fundraise by Scottish hemp insulation startup Indie Nature. Carrying along this path, Cinderella will soon be ready to go to the ball. Finally, I would like to thank the NFU Mutual Charitable Trust and the Nuffield Farming Scholarships Trust for sponsoring me to undertake this journey, as well as, of course, my family, partner, and team on the farm, without whom none of this would have been possible.